I'm now a pastoral minister, and I used to be a defense trial lawyer. Thank you for this opportunity to address this study commission, and I hope there will be another opportunity for public comment upon the release of the commission recommendations. I appreciate the openness and transparency of the hearings to date and urge the same openness and transparency of the subcommittee meetings with dates and times being listed on the website. I am now a pastoral minister at St. Richard Catholic Church in Northeast Jackson and have been in this occupation since September of 2006. I spend most of my time in adult formation, outreach programs, and community and neighborhood issues. I see up close and personal the impact the tax structure has on the lives of ordinary working people. For 36 plus years prior to what I currently do, I was an associate partner, president, and chairman of the board of Wise, Carter, Child, and Caraway, a Jackson law firm. During those years, I saw up close and personal the role of the tax structures, including incentives, played in encouraging economic growth and job creation. And I fully support those efforts to help all of our people. I appreciate and understand the need for a stable source of revenue for essential public services as called for by the governor. I also support the mantra of everyone paying a fair share of taxes, as also called for by the governor. And I understand the pressures on small businesses and the impact the tax structure has on these businesses due to a 100-year history of family business that my family was in Vicksburg until very recently. For the tax structure to best work for everyone, rich, poor, business, workers, young and old, it has to be fair, as the governor has called for. Currently, I submit to you there are imbalances which adversely impact a significant number of working families working hard to achieve self-sufficiency. In Mississippi, as you well know, there are two major avenues for collecting the necessary taxes, and both of these have, I submit to you, regressive features. Our sales tax takes greater share of income from people with lower wages than from people like me with higher wages or 401k income. At the least, I urge you to recommend some relief in sales tax on food, preferably offset by an increased tax of at least 50 cents a pack on cigarettes and tobacco products, and other necessary increases on what are, in effect, non-essential items, such as beer, wine, alcohol, entertainment, athletic events, etc. Most all of which I enjoy very much. Many, as do many of you, I might add, many hurting people need this relief. Insofar as income tax is concerned, adjustments for inflation are badly needed in deductions and exemptions so that working families with wages below the poverty level are not required to pay state income taxes. The basic fact is that each of the lowest four quintiles, the bottom 80%, pay more taxes as a percent of income than the top 20%, and I refer you to the details in studies such as that by the Mississippi Economic Policy Contest, Ed CVAC, and various writings by Mary Ann Hill, which time does not allow me, obviously, to go into. A new tax bracket of 6%, I submit to you, should be restored. We used to have one, so that a family of four earning $30,000 a year would not pay the same marginal tax rate as a family earning $250,000 a year, as is now the case. It's not good business to be unfair. It's not the right and good thing to do. As we are now, we are not paying our fair share of taxes. Thank you for allowing me to address you.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll go back to Mr. Kevin Altman from the Council of Independent Tobacco Manufacturers of America.
Oh, you snuck up behind me. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today with a topic that's probably near and dear to many of your hearts, and that's the taxation on cigarettes. I am Kevin Altman. I'm a consultant for the Council of Independent Tobacco Manufacturers of America, which is a group of small tobacco product manufacturers located throughout the United States. Many faces around the table I've seen and met with you many times dealing with different topics regarding cigarettes. Currently, Mississippi ranks 49th in the country with its excise tax on cigarettes at 18 cents per pack. Only the state of Missouri ranks lower at 17. As you also know, there's a huge push throughout the country through the state level and now through the Kennedy-Waxman FDA oversight of tobacco to reduce smoking throughout the country. And it is working. There's been about a 3 to 4% decline in smoking every year. Now, what does that mean to the state of Mississippi? What that means is when you have a specific tax rate, which is what you have, where there's so much, there's 18 cents per pack collected, as cigarette sales decline, your revenue from those cigarette sales also declines. Yet, the tobacco manufacturers, my companies, and the big tobacco companies in particular, continue to increase prices as time goes forward. Since the inception of what many of you know your settlement that Attorney Moore negotiated, there's been the master settlement agreement as well. Since that time, Philip Morris has raised cigarette prices nearly $14 a carton, of which the state of Mississippi, while they're getting rich, you've seen little to none of that. So what we would like to do is think about some of the alternatives to that, very similar to what you do with your other tobacco products, where you have an ad valorem system. An ad valorem system would allow the state to see increased tax revenues as companies continue to increase their wholesale and retail prices of their cigarettes. What are the real advantages of that? Is that as sales decline, revenues could actually stay steady or increase for the state. As the company's profits soar, so do the profits or the revenues from the states. The one bad thing about a specific tax system, is, especially with a product such as cigarettes, which are very addictive and very difficult to quit once you've started smoking, is that it disproportionately taxes the poor. The person that can afford a Lexus and smokes Marlboros pays the exact same tax as a person who smokes the cheapest of the cheapest brands. And that just doesn't seem fair, to me anyway, that person would pay the same tax when they have to make questions and determinations about what they're going to spend their money on. Cigarettes is a very addictive product. I've come from the cigarette world. I know how addictive it is. If we just look at last year's sales, 550,000 Mississippians purchased 260 million packs of cigarettes last year, which netted the state about $44 million in tax revenue. Had the ad valorem system that you have for other tobacco products been applied to those sales, the state would have received nearly $82 million in revenues. The beauty of an ad valorem system is that as legislatures and tax representatives, you don't have to worry about going back to the legislative session every year that you want to take an increase. I know it's been a long time, and a lot of debates have taken place in the state in the last 5 or 6 years, and really have not increased the tax through those debates. But by switching to something like an ad valorem system, once you've set it, it's pretty much there forever. As long as big tobacco companies go up in prices, you're going to gain more revenue. And it's usually going to be offset. I say that the smoking decline will normally be offset by the increases that the big tobacco companies take. Now, what some people will say is a disadvantage to an ad valorem system is what if you have a Black Friday where cigarette prices just plummet? There is a specific system that's used in Europe, which is a combination of an ad valorem and a specific tax structure, where you have a specific amount that's going to be guaranteed to you, and on top of that you add a component of an ad valorem tax. And that's something else to think about. But we just wanted to bring these ideas to your attention because this has been a hotly debated topic for the last 4 or 5 years. And my company's revenues are increasing. We don't mind paying more taxes to the states through the excise tax process if we're profitable. We think it's only the right thing to do. We also are consumers. Selfishly, our consumers typically tend to be the less fortunate that do not have the income level of the person that can smoke the Marlboros, and we'd like to shift some of that disproportionate tax to the folks that can more afford it. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we have Mr. George Lewis of the Mississippi Municipal League.
I am not George Lewis, but for those of y'all who know George, we didn't think he could hold his comments to 5 minutes. So I am Chip Johnson. I am the mayor of Hernando, Mississippi, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Mississippi Municipal League. And as a side note, I'm also a small business owner. Today, I'm representing all the mayors and aldermen in the state of Mississippi, which means, in essence, I'm representing all the people in the state of Mississippi that live in cities and towns, all the people that couldn't be here today because they're at work making money to pay taxes. There are a lot of people here with manufacturers and corporations. Big business is well represented, so I've got a burden on my shoulders to represent the people that couldn't be here and make up the bulk of those taxes. What we're asking today is that if we need to shift some of the taxes, and I feel certain in a state this big with this complicated a tax structure, something needs to be shifted. But we need to make sure we shift it. We can't just decrease revenues. We just can't do it. The Tax Foundation has ranked Mississippi's overall corporate tax structure as 18th in the nation. I'm pretty proud of that. I think if we're ranked number 1, then we're shifting an inordinate burden to our taxpayers back at home. I think 18 is a good place to be. I think we're doing our job. Lots of people have asked for tax cuts today. A few people have said we need to shift. That's exactly what we may need to do. The people back home in the cities and towns are operating as frugally as we can. I buy used police cars every year. There are other mayors who are out catching dogs and mowing city grass. We cannot absorb any losses in revenues at the local level. If that happens, there are 2 options. We can cut services to our constituents, or we can increase their property taxes. That's all we can do back at home. We have had to absorb some losses of revenues here lately. The Section 42 housing exemption hit us hard. I'm not going to debate the merits of that exemption, but all we know is it was a revenue we had, and now we don't have it anymore. So we've had to either raise our property tax or cut our services. We're still not getting fully funded on homestead reimbursements, exemptions. So there's another revenue that we lose. And now we keep hearing about the inventory tax exemption possibly coming. That's $140 million to our cities and towns in lost revenue. There's absolutely no way we could survive that. So if that is a regressive tax, and if it's something that needs to change, we need to make sure that that shift happens and stays in the same pie. We don't need it coming out of the taxpayers back home piece of that pie. Cities and towns generate 72.14% of all sales taxes collected in this state. 72.14, that's a big number. We're generating the monies, and yet we only get 18.5% of every dollar of sales taxes that are collected. The rest of it goes to the state. We have bonded indebtedness we have to pay. We have no option. We've already got that debt on us. So there are things we have to take care of back home that we wouldn't be able to take care of if we had these losses of revenue. As far as the inventory tax goes, small businesses are already getting a $5,000 tax credit towards inventory taxes paid. One option might be, if we're worried about small business, which I think most of us are, we could increase that exemption for the small businesses on their tax credit. And I may not even take my whole 5 minutes, but the one point I'm trying to get across here, and I'm wearing this badge that says home is important. Most of you live in cities and towns in this state. And when you go back tonight, that's where you're going to go home to. That's where your families live. I would like for you to just take a look around your cities and towns when you go home tonight and picture what they might be like if they had a loss in revenue. Would you have one less police officer sitting there? Would you have one less fire truck? Would you have more potholes in your streets? We are where the rubber meets the road. We are representing the people that live in these cities and towns, and they cannot have any more of the tax burden shifted to them. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mayor. And next we have representative from the Mississippi Forestry Association. Nobody here from Mississippi Forestry Association? All right, we'll go back as Ms. Linda Ferguson here. Or who? Okay. All right. I'd like to ask Mr. Dick Johnson if he would come forward, please.
Good morning. I'm Dick Johnson. I'm representing Common Cause of Mississippi. I'm a board member and a former president. Common Cause Mississippi is pleased that the Governor's Mississippi Tax Commission study is holding these open meetings to hear from the public. Common Cause is a nonpartisan group of citizens who are actively concerned to promote open, fair, and effective government. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. Because of what we are, one of our main issues is the tax structure of Mississippi. We've been pushing for a comprehensive study like this for the past 3 years and are pleased, as I said, to see it. We think there are two levels of concern for the state concerning taxes. The first, and perhaps the underlying purpose of government, is fostering the opportunity for all individual citizens to fulfill their potentials, their potentialities through meaningful educational opportunities, adequate health care, and purposeful employment choices. And that's what we're concerned with in this issue. The second level is the development of the state as a whole to make sure the government runs effectively and fairly, and that natural resources are responsibly used, etc. Those sorts of problems on that broader scale. With this in mind, then, Common Cause Mississippi has three concerns that judges need to be dealt with. The first is our income tax. The income tax brackets need to be modernized. In particular, an additional higher bracket seems to be needed and should be added. We have to make sure that this tax is progressive and does not regressively put a greater burden on the poor citizens than it does on those in higher income brackets. I might just say parenthetically here, my wife and I, retired school teachers, have for the past couple of years paid no state income tax, no state tax on our pensions or our Social Security. Now, we are by no means wealthy, but we are not poor. We're in the middle somewhere. And I'm sure our income exceeds that of many people whose income is a good bit less than ours. Fairness demands that we pay more. Our second primary concern is the unfair nature of our 7% sales tax, which includes food. You perhaps heard of this earlier. I haven't been here, but I'm sure it's been mentioned. This puts an additional burden on those with less, and combined with the income tax brackets, which we have in place mentioned above, have the top 20% of income earners paying a lower percentage of their income towards state and local taxes than the bottom 20% of earners. Again, we seem to be taxing those who have little so that those who have more can pay less and thus have more. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's a cliche statement, but it has meaning, and I hope that the spirit behind it is there for your meetings as you go through the next few months. We speak with along with the good majority of the people of Mississippi in calling for an increase in the tobacco tax. It's almost inconceivable to us that the state fights against a meaningful tax on this debilitating and health destructive habit which costs the state in so many ways. Smokers have a right to choose to smoke, of course, but also the full responsibility for the discomfort and illness caused for others as a direct and indirect result of the smoke, and the burden on the state of their own disabilities and the medical costs to the state because of these disabilities, to say nothing of the lack of productivity due to smoking of both themselves and their victims. These are our three positions. Thank you very much for allowing us here. We hope that you continue and trust that you will continue to include the public in your deliberations throughout the tenure of your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. In wonder of wonders, we're ahead of schedule. So, tell you what we'd like to do. We have a program that's scheduled to start, of speakers that start at 12:30, and I'd like to see if there are any of those folks that are supposed to be here this afternoon that are here right now. We'd like to put you on, and if you would speak to Marie Thomas right in the rear, we'll get it scheduled. Tell you what we'll do, we'll take a 10-minute break while we're at it. 10 minutes now. Our next speaker, everybody quit talking, sit down. Our next speaker is going to be Mr. Bruce Alt, representing the Mississippi Forestry Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the Commission, staff, and distinguished witnesses, thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today and to present you with information that will assist you in your efforts to shape and guide the public policies designed to help Mississippi and our citizens prosper in the future. My remarks will focus on the role that forestry and forest products has in our state. Over 175,000 individual and family forest landowners, our state's 16 section lands held in trust for the benefit of public schools, thousands of professional loggers and truckers, industrial forest landowners, forest products manufacturers and mill workers, and the forestry profession are all an integral part of Mississippi's forest-based economy and community. Our members of the Mississippi Forestry Association sustainably manage our state's 19.6 million acres of forest to produce environmental benefits ranging from clean water, clean air, diverse wildlife habitat, atmospheric carbon storage, outdoor recreational opportunities for our citizens, and natural wood products for the people of the United States and the world. The written testimony that we will submit will provide each of you with factual information and data pertaining to the tax structure of the forestry community, especially for those 175,000 plus private family forest landowners who own and sustainably manage approximately 80% of our 19.6 million acres of forest land. We meet here today less than 3 years after Hurricane Katrina struck our shores. Hurricane Katrina's destruction did not discriminate among Mississippi's individual, family, or industrial forest landowners. All landowners, the loggers, the forest products mills, and the forestry profession have been working together since August 2005 to salvage the maximum volume of usable timber, recover our forest-based communities, and restore our society and environment. All segments of our forestry community were severely crippled, and all suffered huge economic and personal losses. The private non-industrial forest landowners, who own approximately 80% of our timberlands, or 15.6 million acres, were collectively the most grievously impacted in our forestry community. In a matter of hours, and to different degrees, these landowners lost years of hard work and investment in the present and the future, and a source of tremendous wealth for our state. Since our time is very limited, I will seek to impress upon each of you only several key facts. Forestry and forest products function as an engine of prosperity for Mississippi. The basis for this economic engine is the 19.6 million acres of forest land owned 80% by non-industrial, private, and family forest landowners. The annual timber harvest from these sustainably managed and renewable forest lands is valued at over $1 billion. Timber is delivered to a large variety of manufacturing facilities ranging from small family-owned sawmills and furniture frame shops to world-class sawmills and pulp and paper mills. In 2006, the forest products industry employed over 51,000 people, with wages totaling over $2.1 billion. Our total forest products-related jobs were over 123,000, with wages of $4.4 billion. And in 2006, the total impact of the forest products industry on all sectors of our economy amounted to over $17.4 billion. Second key point is that Mississippi's forest resources provide a competitive advantage to the state for forest products businesses. In the globally competitive forestry and forest products business, our tax policy should be designed to leverage our abundant and renewable forest resources and production capabilities. To do so requires recognition of tax policy implications for the individual and family forest landowner, our logging contractors, and our manufacturers. Third, Mississippi currently has some competitive disadvantages that we should view collectively as opportunities. First, Mississippi has relatively high ad valorem taxes. In the South, only Georgia has higher average per acre ad valorem taxes on forest land. Those discourage the necessary long-term forestry investments, jeopardize our ability to meet future fiber needs. High ad valorem taxes also serve as an incentive to convert forest lands to other uses, such as dispersed residential and commercial development, resulting in the loss of green space and ecosystem benefits. Second, low road weight limits for forest products function effectively as a tax. We should carefully examine the costs and benefits of alternative weight limits and understand why so many other states with large forestry business sectors have chosen higher weight limits. Growing trees is a very long-term venture, fraught with many risks. One of the greatest risks is posed by regulatory and environmental tax policy that changes over the requisite long period of investment time. It is vital that current tax policies remain in effect. We will be delighted to provide you with further information. Please be aware of the long-term nature of forest investments and the policies necessary to foster a stable, long-term forest products manufacturing, harvesting, and transportation sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to go to Mr. Kevin Gilbert with the Mississippi Association of Educators.
Good morning. I'm Kevin F. Gilbert, President of the Mississippi Association of Educators. We would like to begin by thanking this commission for its work. We assure the Commission will focus its energies on producing reforms that are in the best interest of all Mississippians and in the long-term interest of the state. By the way, I do have my public comments for you to read at your perusal. There are no graphs or anything that of any significance importance. While the Commission has been charged with looking only at taxes, Mississippi's children don't care only about taxes, and Mississippi's future is not dependent only on taxes, in particular having low taxes. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "Taxes are the price we pay for civilization." In Mississippi, we can no longer afford to purchase our civilization in moderation. This Commission's challenges are clear: to come forward with recommendations that will make Mississippi's taxes fairer, less burdensome to the poor, and that will produce stable and adequate revenues to support the requirements of an ever more demanding 21st century global economy. Only 5 states have top personal income tax rates lower than Mississippi. Included in the top bracket, people whose income are as low as $10,000, an amount well below poverty and a threshold for paying the top income rate that is lower than all but 4 states. At the same time, Mississippi is one of only 4 states to exempt all forms of retirement earnings without limit to regard or income. Mississippi's corporate income tax is the second lowest in the nation, higher than one state, Colorado. But in Colorado, the top corporate rate is applied for the first dollar of income, whereas Mississippi exempts the first $5,000 of earnings and applies a rate of only 3% to the second $5,000. Mississippi's cigarette tax of 18 cents a pack is the second lowest in the nation, while we remain one of only 10 states to apply for full sales tax to food. Finally, a recent study by the Director of the State and Local Finance Research at Rockefeller Institute Government found that because its tax system's low responsiveness to growth, which is due to our dependency on the inelastic sales tax and excise taxes, Mississippi faces a combined state and local government deficit of 9.3% by the year 2013. Only 4 states face a larger such deficit. Since long before 1936, when in the Depression-era desperation, Mississippi became the first state in the nation to issue industrial revenue bonds in a hopeful attempt to attract businesses to the state, generation after generation of Mississippi politicians have tried to grow the state by arguing for low taxes, business incentives, low wages, and business-friendly climate. Some of the very businesses that received those original 1936 revenue bonds had closed before the first bond was paid, leaving only dusty, empty buildings and hopeless, out-of-work people in their wake. Meanwhile, states that had taken the high road of investing in themselves have seen a steady stream of businesses lined up to take advantage of their high-quality infrastructure and their talented, productive workforce. For public education, taxes are the investment mechanism used to enhance our schools by providing an infrastructure that would allow all of Mississippi children to have a quality education. Other states with much higher tax rates than Mississippi are beginning to see the dividends of investing in their schools. New Jersey, for example, ranks at the top of this nation in terms of taxes and is second in the nation in per pupil spending. Consequently, according to a recent report entitled Quality Counts by the Editorial Projects and Education Research Center, New Jersey ranks 4th in the country with a B- overall grade in educational system, an A- in chance for success, and a B- in K-12 achievement. Additionally, New Jersey ranks in the top of the nation in all National Assessment of Education Progress, we know as NAEP, categories, clearly showing that a proper investment with the quality of monies coming in can show you educational progress. In closing, MAE, thanks to the Commission for allowing us this opportunity to speak. And we would like to point out that as these meetings continue, it is extremely important that they remain public and that all stakeholders are allowed to have opportunities such as this to voice their concerns and provide valuable insight. Your challenge is clear and your burden is heavy. But for the sake of Mississippi, its children, its future, you can't fall back on political expediency or the hope that tried and failed policies of the past can somehow be dusted off and make it work for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jennifer Coffer, Communities for a Clean Bill of Health.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Kofer. I'm the Executive Director of the American Lung Association in Mississippi. I serve as chairperson for the Communities for a Clean Bill of Health, which has been advocating for a $1 cigarette tax for many years. We do have a handout in your packet. It's supposed to have a green outline, if you have not found it yet. I have 4 points. One, I'm going to talk about the tobacco toll in the United States. Secondly, in Mississippi. Third, the benefit of a tobacco tax increase. And the fourth point is the cost if we do not raise the tobacco tax. Tobacco is the leading preventable cause of death, killing more than 400,000 people each year. Tobacco results in $96 billion in annual health care cost. Tobacco causes 90% of lung cancer cases, 1/3 of total cancer deaths, 1 in 5 deaths from heart disease. 4,000 kids try their first cigarette every day. Another 1,000 kids become regular smokers every day. Specifically in Mississippi, 4,700 people die every year in this state from a tobacco-related disease. 15,400 kids try their first cigarette each year in our state. 4,400 additional kids become regular daily smokers every year in our state. 69,000 kids alive today will die from tobacco use. I speak very passionately about this because I have a 16-year-old brother who was caught with cigarettes and spit tobacco within the past 6 months. And I've been in tobacco prevention for 7 years. And who did my parents sick on him but me to talk to him about tobacco prevention? It was easy. It was pocket change for him to go and buy that. He's 16 years old. It's an addiction that I do not want him to have, so I speak very passionately about the tobacco tax being 18 cents a pack, the third lowest in the nation, because they include D.C. Yes, we're second in the 50 states, but they include D.C., so we're third lowest in the nation at 18 cents. Have not raised the cigarette tax since 1985, and I've began many of my talks asking you, where were you in 1985? I was 7 years old. That's how long it's been since we've raised a tobacco tax. It is money that we're leaving on the table. I'm going to tell you the benefits of raising a tobacco tax for the state of Mississippi. It's a win for public health, it's a win for our state budget, and it's a win for voters in Mississippi. For every 10% increase in the price of tobacco, you'll see a 7% decline in youth smoking prevalence, a 2% decline in adult smoking prevalence. It's harder for adults to quit. A 4% decline in overall consumption. So for every 10% increase, you'll see a 7% decline in the youth smoking, a 2% decline in adult prevalence, and a 4% decline in overall consumption. Tobacco taxes and revenues are stable because the decline in smoking will be gradual. People are going to continue to smoke. It is an addictive product. But we will deter from kids from starting to smoke. Predictable. Tobacco taxes are predictable, much easier to estimate than personal or corporate income tax revenues. Tobacco taxes are adjustable. Any declines can be offset by additionally increasing. There are 26 states that increased their tobacco tax last year to be over $1. Tobacco taxes produce health care cost savings. A decline in consumption will automatically offset us in the future by health care cost savings. $174 million in revenue will happen in our state if we increase the cigarette tax by $1. $9 million in 5 years will see savings from smoking-related costs during pregnancy. $9 million in savings from reducing smoking during pregnancy. $13 million savings from reduced heart attacks and strokes if we increase the cigarette tax by $1. $957 million in long-term health care savings from smokers averted if the $1 cigarette tax is increased. I'm going to repeat those. $9 million from reduced smoking during pregnancy, $13 million in 5 years savings from reduced heart attacks and strokes, $957 million in long-term health care savings from increasing our cigarette tax to $1, by $1 to $1.18. Some other quick statistics, benefits of a $1 tax increase. 41,700 fewer kids will smoke. 13,300 kids will not die a premature death. 24,000 fewer adults will smoke. And 6,300 adults will not die from a tobacco-related disease. My last point, if we do not raise the cigarette tax by $1, we will have more smokers, more health-related costs, more smoking-caused deaths, Within the next 5 years, we'll see $7.3 million from smoking-related births, $23.6 million from more heart attacks and strokes, and long-term additional health care costs. It's an increased burden for every citizen, especially Medicaid population. $564 out of each one of your households is paid for Medicare costs related to smoking. We'll see less government revenue and an overall decrease in our health care system related to smoking. I'll be glad to field any questions afterwards, but these handouts are available to you if you would like them. We're all about increasing the lung health in Mississippi and increasing the cigarette tax by $1. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have representing the Children's Defense Fund, Alta Fitzgerald. Have I got it written down here right?
It's okay. Good morning. My name is Olita Garrett Fitzgerald, and I serve as the Director of the Children's Defense Fund Southern Regional Office. It's based here in Jackson, Mississippi. CDF is a 35-year-old national child advocacy organization whose Leave No Child Behind mission is to ensure every child a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and a moral start in life. We pay particular attention to the needs of poor and minority children and those with disabilities. Stand before you recognizing that you have a tremendous responsibility and opportunity. Your recommendations from this Tax Study Commission could shape, inform, and influence Mississippi's prosperity for years to come. We urge the Tax Study Commission to recommend tax policy that invests in children and families, invests in systems to ensure accountability, enhances the quality of life for all Mississippi citizens, and examines all tax expenditures, those that are on budget and those that are off, including bonds, incentive payments, and etc. The Tax Study Commission should encourage and continue public participation in this tax reform process by making all committee and all subcommittee meetings open to the public and holding them across the state, and by presenting the Tax Study Committee's recommendations to the public through education sessions across the state before legislative action is taken. Everybody pays taxes. A June 23rd John Stennis Institute of Government report that was commissioned by the Children's Defense Fund states that Mississippi families making $19,000 or less are estimated to be paying roughly 20% of state and local tax revenues paid by families. Poor families pay property taxes through their rent. Specifically, CDF comes before you to recommend that the tax policy recommendations include an increase in the excise tax on cigarettes by $1, that we look at enacting a state-earned income tax credit for low-wage workers, and that we make Mississippi's tax system more progressive by diversifying the tax brackets to make them fair and equitable. A few facts about Mississippi's most precious and valuable investment is people and its children. 31%, 3 in 10 of the children who live in Mississippi are poor. The number of adults receiving welfare, temporary assistance for needy families, are 32,000 families and children. The average check they receive for a family of 3 is $170 a month. Approximately 100,000 children in Mississippi are without health insurance. Though over 50% of those enrolled in Medicaid are children, they account for only 24.4% of medical expenditures. 11.6% of the babies born in Mississippi in 2004 were born at low birth weight, which affects their abilities and their education. Child hunger in Mississippi, only 60% of eligible persons in Mississippi receive food stamps. Early childhood development in Mississippi, approximately 67% of children under age 6 have all parents in the labor force. Over 44% of poor children have no access to early childhood education offered by Head Start programs or child care centers, meaning these children are entering school having had no preconditioning, which leads to the percent of fourth graders reading below grade level in Mississippi is 82%. The percent of fourth graders reading below grade level in math is 81%. In Mississippi, we spend $5,792 per pupil for public schools. Mississippi spends 1.8 times that amount per prisoner and people we have incarcerated in this state. Mississippi ranks 50th among states in per pupil expenditures, 50th among states in the percent of children who are poor, 51st among states in percent of babies born at low birth weight, 51st among states in its infant mortality rate, 1 being the best, 51 being the worst. You have a choice. We recommend a system that decreases the revenue in an already, you can recommend a system that decreases the revenue in an already broken system, or you can invest in Mississippi citizens to increase the tax base. A tax system should be fair, adequate, and accountable, and must not be used to drive public policy by removing money from an already strained budget. We also must look at income and expenditures if we are to be credible. There's no way to talk about cutting taxes without talking about the impact on the state's budget. And I'll end with a story that I heard from a gentleman who I give some credence to being wise, who said to me at one point in time that you have 2 ways to ease your burden, Olita. You can either take something off of your wagon, or you can get you another horse. We argue that we need to put some more horses pulling the wagon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, it's 12 o'clock. We're going to take a break for 30 minutes, and we'll be right back here.